Dr. Jazz.
Taking the time first, talk to so many guys you played with over the last 30 years or more. So, and of course, I've been following your music. We basically played at a certain point with the same musicians.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah, I also had the rhythm section of John Hebert and Gerald Cleaver, and I played with Julian a lot. So
okay,
and so I've been following you, but I wanted to start with you've been incredibly active and prolific the last 25, 30 years, like so many groups, so many albums, so many projects, and like a stupid question, but where do you find the energy and all the creativity for this?
It just comes. I always I follow certain lineages, musical lineages, like let's say chamber music with woodwinds, or a rhythm section band, or large ensembles. Now it's also electronics. I'm starting something with contemporary musicians from the contemporary music scene.
Oh, wow.
And then I do that for a while, and I usually have that in my mind for a longer time. And then at some point there's the opportunity to do it, and then I do that for a while. And whatever I start, I always try to make it in a way that it can be 10 plus years. I don't do anything that is only for 1 year or once or something.
Yeah, so
unless I'm invited to perform with, like Taishan Zori, I was invited to perform with them in a duo. So that's another thing. But usually my projects are always projects that are that my plan is to do them for 10 plus years, at least 3 CDs. And then they go on, and some of them go on for, I mean, the clarinet trio will turn 25 next year. Basement Research is the 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
And then I stopped some of them, like Talam, for example. That project I stopped when it was 24 years because it was 11 musicians, and that was just not possible anymore. Yeah. I mean, in these days. And as long as I feel I can add something in this specific project musically, I keep doing it. Sure. That's all, And then some of the projects run longer than I expected, much longer actually, which is why sometimes there are 3, 4. Like this year, there are 4 new CDs of 4 different projects. I would like to strengthen one thing. There's a lot of people who have 50, 70 CDs out, improvising people. They put out every little bit that they recorded live at some place, and this is how it comes that they have all these.
I know what you mean.
But they are all alike.
I know.
If you heard one, you heard 5 or 10.
I will not mention names here, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's not the case in my projects. Each of the projects have a certain concept. I compose for the projects. I write music. I work in the whole production, recording, mastering, editing process. I do all that. And so the CD is a little statement. Each CD is a little statement. There are exceptions. I did some live CDs, but most of them are statements. And there are, a lot of people, it took them many years till they finally found out and called me and said, "Man, you're building up a whole oeuvre." And I say, well, I told you, it takes time to listen to all this music, but it all relates. It all relates. Be it, you can't just say, I only like this or only like that. It all relates.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you found when you say you compose, that when I listen to your music, like as a composer, you always have this red line going on, it's
always, and I add certain things like a classical composer or any composer,
like
any musician. And I have to say, well, the times of long-lasting only one band careers are over.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not today. That's not happening anymore. But other than that, all the musicians or artists I admire, they always reinvented themselves.
True.
They always did, and none of them did this one thing and then kept doing this for 20 years.
Yeah, definitely. Who are these artists that you admire?
There's a lot. I mean, it goes from it is Shostakovich, it is Stravinsky, it is Lutoslawski, it is all these composers, Ligeti. And then, but then on the other hand, it's Charles Mingus, it's Miles Davis, especially Miles Davis always reinvented himself. It's Coltrane, of course, Coltrane, but there's, dozens of saxophone
it's so much music.
That's not this one. And it's progressive rock music from the 70s that I still like. Bands like King Crimson I grew up with.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Robert Fripp.
The Canterbury scene. And the other day we listened to the Can recordings in a car because somebody played Radiohead for me. And I said, okay, and now I'll show you where this comes from. And so we listened to this one Can recording. And I know where a lot of music comes from because I heard these bands live. And I, like Queen, for example, I heard Queen live and they were completely unknown.
Oh, wow, man. That's amazing.
And obviously I know where Queen got their input from, so on and so on, Nobody is in the air and suddenly he has this one idea. I mean, it's always we're all living in a world with music, and we listen to this music and somehow try to add our own thing to it.
Yeah, it's a lineage, Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there is a lineage,
and it's all connected. Yeah. But you mentioned
all connected. Yeah.
You mentioned the 70s, and I guess mid 70s or early 70s. Just speaking about the jazz-wise, not going to the classical world now, but like, what got you excited for improvisation? What were those first artists back in Germany? Then it was still.
Well, I'm coming from the contemporary music scene and from the prog rock contemporary. They called it back then. They called it krautrock in Germany.
Sure.
But bands like Amondül, Xol, Neu, Kraftwerk, all these bands. I saw each of these bands several times.
Sure.
And also the British scene, like King Crimson, Gentle Giant, Hatfield and the North, Henry Cow, Genesis. I saw each of these bands several times. And so that's one thing. The other thing is the contemporary composers, Lutoslawski, Penderecki, these people, because it was, there were concerts in where I grew up in Bonn, near Cologne. And there were always concerts of this music, and it was cheap to get in there for young students. So I went there with one or two of my friends, and there was no big turnout audience-wise, maybe 50 people, maybe 100 people in a big hall.
Wow.
So we checked that out, and we also checked out some of the jazz music, of course, rock jazz. Soon it was more rock jazz and experimental jazz, because there were the saxophone players I liked. Obviously, in prog rock, there were saxophone players or woodwind players here and there, but not the ones I really liked. Once I came into jazz, I started to listen to jazz music. I thought, okay, this is it. This is my music, in terms of my instrument. And so I always tried to combine all these things, because when I went to classical contemporary music concerts, I thought, yeah, great compositions, fantastic compositions. Now give me some improvisation, please. But there was no improvisation. Then the next day I went to a jazz concert and thought, great improvisation, but give me some composition, please. This is really lousy what you have there composition-wise. And then I went to prog rock band, and I thought, okay, it's great, all the guitars, keyboards, bass, drums, but give me some horn players. So that's what I tried to combine.
But you didn't study music, right?
I did.
You did study music, jazz or classical?
I started classical and then was jazz, basically.
Oh, okay. Well, where did you study?
Hamburg.
Oh,
Hamburg.
Really? Okay, I didn't know that. Okay. But, late 70s, or early 80s. How did you, I know those first recordings you did, especially with Andreas Willers. I wanted to ask you about your connection with Andreas, because, he seems to be quite important for you guys in the beginning. You cooperated on so many different projects together. But how was your story of entering the German jazz or improvised scene, however you want to call it, in the beginnings?
Well, in the beginning, I was in Hamburg. I studied medicine, of course. Also, that was my main study.
Yeah, that I read.
And then, I didn't finish it, but I was close to finish it. Then I really decided it was not medicine was not for me.
Good.
But I could have done that. Anyway, I was close. So it was a pretty busy time back then, doing all these things parallel. In Hamburg, there was a scene, some kind of a scene, but not a strong contemporary music scene. There are certain towns that have a contemporary music scene, like Berlin, especially now, and others don't, like Hamburg. So there is maybe 10 musicians who are interested in this kind of music. So you have to play together because there's nobody else. So that's how we started. And my first band was not my band, it was a cooperative project, was a keyboards, a vocalist, no lyrics, just vocals and Dadaistic lyrics, and myself playing woodwinds and Lyricon, electric, which is the electric woodwind of those. On the Rheinland-Pfälzer Musiktage, which is a festival for contemporary music, and that's how I started, So, and then I started, and then I took lessons with Herb Geller, so I learned a lot about the tradition. And and all the other, a lot of other musicians.
Sure.
Liebman for a while.
Oh, really?
So, and then I made my way back into the tradition and studied that and learned that and decided what I wanted to use and decided also what I didn't want to use. Which is really important. If you go back to the tradition, you have to decide what is good for you and what is not. Yep. You can still like it or love it, but sometimes certain things don't work in your music.
Music. Sure.
They just don't work. So I did that, and then I moved to Berlin in '83. By then,
already.
in '83, I moved to Berlin, and that's when everything really exploded, because there was a big scene. I mean, it wasn't as big as today, but there was a scene. There were lots of possibilities to perform live, which was not the case in Hamburg. There were all kinds of things. So it took maybe half a year till I played big band. I had played in salsa bands. I played, had my own jazz projects. I played in rock bands. I did sideman jobs for people. I played, I did studio work, you know, just to find out if I can live on music, which I could. I've pretty fast found out. And then the next step was, I mean, that was in '83. So the next step was many years later, not can I live on music, but can I live on my music?
Yeah.
So that was the next step. And that was like in the towards '87, '88, maybe. So that took a couple of years.
Sure.
But when I came to Berlin, a year later, Andreas came and we started all these projects. Obviously, we had our duo before.
Yeah.
And then we started Out to Lunch, and then we started the Minimal Kids, and then we had these trio recordings, and we did all these things. We toured in Africa, Australia, Asia, everywhere, all over the world. And so it exploded after I came to Berlin, yes.
How did
that's when we
how did all these projects happen? You know, these connections with Andreas, like, you know, there's a record with Enrico Rava, then there is something you did before with Glenn Moore, and
that's a Minimal Kids. That's easy to explain. We had a piece on our very, very first LP, Andreas and me. It was a minimal piece called Beirut, and that piece worked with loops. You would call it loops today, but I mean, back then there were no loops.
Sure.
And delay and all that. And then there was a certain thing and a certain vibe to it. It was the first piece of the LP of Andreas, of the first LP of Andreas and me. And there was this promoter, producer, impresario in Cologne, Vera Brandes. And we tried to get in contact with her, and we finally got in contact with her, and she wanted this piece for her publishing company. And obviously the company that put out the LP said, "You're crazy. We don't give you the A1 piece of an LP only and nothing else."
Sure.
So we said to Vera, "Well, how about this? We do a whole project with music like this for you." And that was the beginning of Minimal Kids.
Ah, okay, interesting.
Easy. So we did a whole project, and we also used people that we knew. Nico Schäuble on percussion, who was the drummer of Out to Lunch. And you know, and the idea was to do a project that used certain minimal techniques that had nice melodies on top, and all the advanced and really complicated stuff was hidden below, so people would just listen to the melodies. So because the idea was, we talked about this and we thought, which is still the case today, listeners listen to music from top to bottom. Musicians listen from bottom to top. So if we do a very nice melody on top, we can be really successful even if we put a 15/8 below.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It worked. It was a hit in the jazz disco, the main jazz disco of those days in Berlin. A 15/8. It worked. And so that was that project. Yeah, and well, you know, you do something and then other record labels listen to it, and you're talking to people, and then they say, "Oh, I really like this, and this. I mean, I like your soprano playing. Oh, I like this or that composition or that piece." And then you say, "Okay, I can do more of the. I mean, I can do whole projects using this and continuing in another direction or something. So that's how it works.
Yeah. How did then the association with Enrico Rava begin?
That was basically Out to Lunch, and Out to Lunch there was a program in Berlin with which you could hire other musicians, well-known musicians, and there was funding for that.
Okay.
And I think with Out to Lunch it was only Enrico Rava. It was Enrico Rava. Oh no, it was Dave Liebman before,
really?
who helped us produce our first LP.
Oh, okay.
So that was a workshop. We didn't play with him, but that was a workshop. And then with Enrico we played and did this recording and did a number of concerts throughout Germany. So that was a little different. With Liebman, it was more like a workshop, a master class or something. And with Enrico, it was we really played our music.
Okay, yeah, that's way better than Yeah, I mean, it's like all these incredible musicians you gathered when you worked, with Andreas. Also, there's like, I found on Bandcamp, like this recording you did with Paul Bley, which is Leverkusen 91, right? That was just...
Paul Bley, you're talking about the live recording on my website?
Yeah.
On Bandcamp?
Yeah,
that was never released. It was just, I found it somewhere and then I thought, oh, why not put it on Bandcamp?
And this was just the one time you played with Paul, or did you do several things?
We played 1, 2, 3, I think 4 concerts maybe.
Oh, really? Okay.
Also visited him in Cherry Valley. Yeah.
How was Paul like? I mean, he had his...
It's Paul Bley. You can read, there's dozens, hundreds of stories about Paul Bley. And what can I say? They are right.
I mean, the music is incredible, but like this other stuff is always...
The guy is unbelievable, an unbelievable creative personality. And also there was try and error and was also involved, which I liked a lot. Sometimes he said, I mean, he told me stories or things, what is going to be the next thing in music. I mean, and he was so sure about it. And 10 years later, he told me, Gebhard, you know what I told you 10 years ago? I think I was wrong. So, like, that's Paul.
Amazing. Yeah. But this is where your association with US musicians started. I mean, also Sweet Noir was even before, like, it was something that I didn't associate, wouldn't like in the beginning, especially what you're working now, but that project with Marvin Smitty Smith and Bob Stewart, did you then start going to the US slowly, or how did that begin, the cooperation?
We had a tour, I think how was it? I think we came from Australia, something like that. Anyway, we went to New York and we had this recording in the making, the Sweet Noir recording, and we thought, why not hire some guests and make it a little bigger than the last two recording. So more, I mean, this is where my orchestration stuff started with all the woodwinds and what led into Talam in the end.
Yeah.
And this was one of the first productions where I did that. And I did that also for other people. I did that also commercially as a studio musician. I did whole woodwind sections for commercial productions. And so this is where it started. And we went to New York. We called up the people. I think Paul Bley was helpful in telling the people these are serious musicians. So we hired the people, we went to a studio and we did it.
Okay. Yeah. Did you ever live in New York or move to New York?
I commuted to New York for more than 10 years. I think it was 11 or 12 years.
Wow.
I had a place in New York, and I had
Really?
a place in Berlin. And my family was in Berlin, and I was in New York maybe 3-4 months out of a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's how
For
basement
long
research
time.
happened? Or that's how basement research happened? Or
Basement research happened in a very specific way. And that led actually to my living in New York, partly. I met Paul at the Quasimodo in Berlin. He was playing a concert with Jimmy Jufer and Steve Swallow. And we talked during the break, and I said, well, I can't see anything moving for me here in Berlin. And my drummer went to Australia. And, you know, it was the wall was already down, but it was not. All that you see now didn't start to happen, or at least I didn't.
sure.
I didn't see it happen. And so Paul said, I don't really know what I can do, but just wait a minute because I will go to Milano tomorrow. So like 2 days later, I get a fax from the owner of Soul Note Records, Giovanni Bonandrini, the father. And the fax said, we want you to go to New York, find yourself 3 musicians from the US and do your first quartet recording for Soul Note.
Wow, okay.
So, yeah, the dream of any jazz musician.
Yeah.
And we pay for everything, of course. That was also said.
Oh, man, okay.
So I had this, I started basement research. That's how it started.
How did you decide for those guys? I think it was.
Well, the guys I
Ellery,
knew from before. I knew Phil Haynes from before. Phil Haynes, actually, Andreas met Phil during a workshop in Banff in Canada years before, and we did something with Phil. I'm sure we did something with Phil before, and then I went there and I stayed at Phil's place, and then Phil obviously was working with Gress and Ellery Eskelin, and so that was an ongoing trio.
Yeah, they had a group.
So I thought, okay, this is a starting point. I already have a trio. They're very supportive, and this is how it started, and then I took it from there.
Yeah, I think this is, at least getting the recognition wise, it's probably one of your most important projects, right? I mean, especially combining US musicians, I mean, later also European ones, but, US musicians with your music and touring around Europe.
Yeah, well, you play here and there and you meet people. Obviously, when I play as one of the first bass clarinet players, on the scene, obviously I met John Sermon at some point or Luis Clavis at some point. I mean, you meet these people, you just have to.
Sure.
That doesn't mean you do something together with them, but it means of each other. And then there is not that many people, especially in those days, there were not that many people around who were interested in this kind of music. I think it's still the same.
Yeah.
And so you know of each other, and if you have the possibility or you are willing to launch a new project, you come up with a list of musicians you want to work with, and then obviously there are logistical problems, financial problems, and then the list gets smaller and smaller. And then
Exactly.
you take it from there. Maybe you know somebody in person. This is how it works.
Yeah. How do you see the development of basement research? I wrote down the list of players in this group, and it's basically who's who in creative modern music or jazz, whatever we want to call it.
Well,
but
a lot of others, but it was Phil Haynes and Gress.
Yeah.
Then there was a tour. something was with Gress. Then I wanted to do another tour. Phil was out of the picture. I mean, we did 1, 2, 3 CDs together. The trio of Ellery, Phil, and Drew broke up. Ellery was seemed to be no longer interested in working with these guys. And so I thought, oh, maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah.
So I asked Tony Malaby. And then I get an email, I think it was already emails of Gress, and he got some festival gig with some really well-known musicians. So what can I say? I needed another bassist, which was Mark Elias. I mean, again, it's a small number of people. I called up Mark Elias. I knew Jerry Hemingway because I played with him before. And so that was that version.
Really? I didn't know that. With Mark.
Yeah, that was, we never recorded. We were on tour one time.
Man.
And there were fantastic concerts and not so fantastic concerts.
You have some recordings of that group? Like bootlegs?
There's
like
no recording
live?
of that group.
No. Shit. Oh, that's a shame.
We never recorded, maybe live recordings, but I don't have anything. And by the end of the tour, I thought, okay, this didn't go so well. So I move on. And if I move on, I rethink the whole concept. And this is when I started with 3 horn players.
Yeah.
And added Steve Swell to it. And then was John Hebert and Gerald Cleaver. I don't know how that. Gerald was with Scott Dubois, and Scott Dubois was on Soul Note, and I may have met him somewhere. I don't know. I have no idea. I can't remember. And it was John Hebert and Gerald Cleaver, and then John, at some point, John became a father, so he didn't want to tour that much. It's all life.
Yeah.
There's always something, and you have to deal with it. And that's, and then I asked Gerald, whom can you recommend for the bass position? This is how it works very often. I mean, you start it, and once somebody wants to leave the band, you ask, like, if it's the bassist, obviously you ask the drummer, or the other way around. And, this is how it works. And then it keeps moving on, and that worked pretty well, but maybe it's now time. I think next year's allowed. I think so, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's incredible. Okay.
I may redecide, but at this point, I'm getting older. Also, it's a 5-piece band. A 5-piece band these days is financially almost impossible.
Possible. True.
Especially if you have flights, transatlantic flights involved and all that.
Yes.
I mean, I really like the guys. I really like the project. They're very supportive, also financially. Everything is really cool. But I can only do a tour every 3 or 4 years, because otherwise I don't get enough venues, because we basically, I mean, where are we going? We're going in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. That's it.
Yeah, I know.
There's nothing in France. There was something in France, but that's it, basically. Maybe something in Poland. That's long ago as well. So that's a limited number. If we would have an international agent who would do something in Italy and Spain and Portugal, etc., then I could continue. But since I do it myself, basically, with my longtime agent, Constanze Schliebs, who is also active in these areas only, that is a point when you can't really continue. Also, I can do it every 3-4 years. The next time I can do it, I'll be 70.
Sure. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Explains it already.
No, also how much work it goes. I have a 2-week tour in October this year with in a trio, and I also booked myself for the last 20 years, and I know how much work goes into making one 2-week tour. It's just like, it's really a lots of, oh shit, you still have to book that, and you have to take care of, I don't know, they don't have drums there. What are we gonna do? We have to take it.
It's a lot of work, and I think none of the basement research tours went. When I ended the tour, I think, except for one tour, I always lost money.
Yeah, I can imagine. Always. Sure. Already like 3 flight tickets.
I always lost money. So, I do it. I will lose money again next time. I do it because I love it. I love the guys. I love the music. I love the band. It's really one of my most important projects. But if I see me doing it again, sure. For my 70th birthday, I decided maybe it's time to move on with something else.
Yeah. Makes sense. Complete. Yeah, definitely. What about the conference call? The other important one?
Conference call is a band where everybody books.
Okay.
It's a very real cooperative band. Each of the band members books, each of the band members write music.
That helps.
So it's a real cooperative band that can continue in a way. I mean, it's also musically now with Uwe Oberg on piano. It's musically really interesting. It turned into a new direction. So that can, because of that, it's just, you have a certain amount of energy and time. And if you have to book everything yourself, and you do that for 3-4 projects, you have an agency, a booking agency right there in your home.
Exactly.
And that you cannot do if you also want to compose music.
Yeah, and live a life, actually.
Now. Yeah. My main thing now is composing music. I mean, for orchestra and string quartet. That's what I'm really interested in. So I have to cut down on the other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, how do you compose? I listened to the last album for New Zealand, which is beautiful, by the way, and you wrote some amazing music there. Like, let's say for jazz contexts, how do you usually compose? On piano, or how do you start?
On piano, usually on piano, and also the horns. The melodies I do very often on the horns, because it's just the long notes, and it's my bread and butter instrument. But I also use the piano. I mean, I think you can hear it on one of the pieces, Welcome to the Red Island. That's a piece that's a real contemporary music piece, basically.
Yeah.
And also the conceptions. This time I really concentrated with my 3 pieces. I concentrated on conceptions. I like yo-yo is this.
Yeah, yo-yo is beautiful.
Crossfade, this long crossfade into this electronic percussion madness, and then back to the where it came from. And the yo-yo obviously is the repeat with always little changes of the theme. And the master plan variations, well, that was an ongoing, that's a piece I wrote a while ago, and this is part 1, part 2, and part 3 we had on the CD before, and also in other bands. And part 1 I revised. I wrote it originally as a part 1, 2, 3 suite, but I never performed it as a suite. Just didn't happen. So I revised part 1 so we can use it for this CD, which is obvious. We did 1 CD, we did a couple of tours, and now, I mean, after this time that we work together, I know more specific what I can ask
from the players. Yeah. When you speak about conceptions, that's how you usually start the composition, that you write down on a piece of paper where you want to go, not even music wise, but like, or.
It's a progress. Not progress, process. Yeah. You write music, and sometimes you have a specific idea how you want it. But then you also let the people who play it decide and take you to other directions.
Sure.
Sometimes everything is written out, especially if you have larger ensembles. It's a process. And with Chicago playing, obviously, I had this, like the crossfade with the madness. That was, I mean, they did this at a concert, and I thought, oh, this is great. I want to write something so it really fits in and gets a certain focus. And obviously, the chamber music piece, yeah, I mean, that was all written. And I already knew how Steve will sound over it, and it's exactly how he sounds.
Yeah,
he always sounds great, you know. But it's like
amazing,
when he starts his solo, I'm thinking, yes,
exactly.
This is what I wanted.
Exactly. I mean, you go back with Steve a long time ago, but what about Fred and Michael? How did they come into the equation?
Well, Fred and Michael I met, I think I met before in Chicago. I never played with them. Fred and Michael come through Steve, because Steve was a lot in Chicago.
Yeah.
And we had this project before with Barry Altschul and Hill Green. And he said, let's move on to something else. And I said, why not? You know, I mean, obviously I knew Fred and Michael, you know, so I thought this could be really challenging and great music.
Yeah, it's a different energy. It's, you know, sound-wise, they come from a different, you know, musical background, of course, you know.
Yeah, both of them have a totally different approach.
Yeah.
A very specific approach, each of them. And it's not the normal double bass drums situation, which is really great.
Yeah, I love that. With compared, you know, with kind of New Yorkish rhythm sections that you have, they have that New York attitude. Not saying that there are not musicians like Fred and Michael in New York, of course they are, but you can feel the, you know, this different energy of them.
Yeah, it's different. It's just different. It's very specific. Yeah,
it's beautiful. Yeah. Otherwise, I wanted to ask you about one thing. What about your solo playing? You know, I've seen you've been involved a lot with electronics and loopers now and samplers. Is this a thing, you know, you will continue in the future also, or making like some more albums?
There's a little solo thing on my Bandcamp site.
I know, that's why I'm saying
I had like 2 or 3 solo concerts so far. And the plan is to continue with this, but at this point I have the new Condensat.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it's
this
beautiful.
new project Hemisphere with the 3 ladies. I mean, there's all these other things coming up. And so I thought, okay, the solo thing, at some point further down the road, it'll happen. I have a program. I worked on it for a while, and now I'm not working on it. I will come back to it at some point. And I already also, I thought maybe I recorded at home. So I have the microphones, I have the software set up, everything is set up. I did all that and then I stopped it, you know, so it'll happen at some point.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's nice to see, you know, you mentioned Liebman and in the beginning, and Liebman did a lot of solo records. I love that stuff, you know, and of course Lacey did and everyone, but it's nice to hear how you approach it, you know, with different horns.
Well, my first solo record in a way was Talam.
Sure,
I overdubbed all these instruments, but that was a solo record. So my next solo record won't have overdubs, but it's loopers and all kinds of things instead. I already know that. And as I said, I have a program. I did these concerts. I would have to get back to it. I mean, for a CD, 40, 50 minutes, I already have that. You know, that I can do, you know.
Is it scary playing solo saxophone, or heavy? Or not at all? Is it heavy or scary in a way, playing solo saxophone? It's like, you know,
no, it's a concentration effort. You have to be very concentrated all the time.
Yeah.
I guess you can, when you do it a lot, you get used to it. and you know how to get into the state of mind that you need for that. But in the beginning, since there's no action from other sides, you can't really sit down or relax. You always have to be on the case. It's a little exhausting in the beginning, but it's another thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, super.
Definitely want to do that at some point.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, looking forward to an album when it comes out. So, yeah. But cool, Gebhard. Otherwise, for the remainder of the year, do you have a tour coming up, or what's the plan for until the end?
This year is not much. This year were all the Corona leftovers, so it was really difficult to book anything. Next year, I'll go on tour with Conference Call and, as I said, Basement Research. Super. I play with my clarinet trio a lot these days because we have this new CD with German jazz compositions from the 50s and 60s. And that CD does really gets unbelievable reviews. It's amazing. I mean, especially since we have done this music for 25 years now. But better late than never. You know. And maybe everything comes together now with these pieces from another time, and then we use our techniques that we developed over the years, and maybe that's more easy to understand.
Yeah.
But you know, I had concerts in Berlin with this new program, and suddenly musicians show up, Berlin musicians, who in 22 years never came to one concert, and then they say to me, "Wow, this is the best band of Berlin I ever heard." And I said, "Yeah, well, it's only 20 years that you had a chance to listen to this band several times a year." And that's how long it takes sometimes. And this is why it makes sense to keep working with a project as long as you think it still develops.
Yeah.
I was surprised, I have to say, and also yet now with the CD, I was surprised about the reviews we got from outside Germany, because outside of Germany it's already released. In Germany, it will be released for my 65th birthday, which is in November, and also the New Zealand CD will be released in Germany for that.
Oh, okay.
It's all part of one big thing: New Zealand, clarinet trio, and the third Condensat CD with Liz Kosek on keyboards. And that'll bring us back to the 70s. I tell you that. I can already tell you it'll bring us back to the 70s, but also look way ahead. The guy who wrote the press release for my birthday, he was so blown away from that, because there is no boundaries anymore. It's like, it's called Andere Planeten, Other Planets. And he said, that's exactly what it is. It sometimes sounds like alien music, but it uses, you know, it has like here and there, it has like electric piano and then certain things that you know, you for a moment you think, weather report, and then something happens and you think, oh my God, it's something completely different. And I like that. That's what I like. I mean, that's my music, and we, you know, why not use something if it's good?
Sure, definitely. Yeah. Beautiful, man. Looking forward to it. I hope to see you live soon, if you make it, I don't know, maybe to Graz or something like that. I'll definitely catch you up.
But that's basically, those 3 CDs are part of my birthday celebration. I don't have many concerts around my birthday, so the concerts will be a year
next
later.
Year. Yeah. Super.
And,
Super. Good. Sounds like a busy time and a busy year, so that's good. Fantastic. Cool. Gebhard, thanks so much for taking this hour and share some of your thoughts.
You're very welcome.
Really inspiring to hear you talk. So thanks.
I know I've been talking a lot.
You need water now.
I know I need the water.
Yeah. Cool, man. Thanks so much. Stay strong and keep it up. So
thanks, man. Take it easy. Ciao, ciao.